Welcome back to the 2021 Civil Affairs Symposium hosted by the CA Association. Today, we're talking about Workshop 3, which is the Non-Commissioned Officer Forum, and the title for this year's session is The Role of the CA NCO in Building Networks. Our facilitator is retired Command Sergeant Major Timothy Kohring. By day, he is the Regional Plan Specialist for U.S. Army Special Operations Command, and by night, he is the Honorary Sergeant Major of the Civil Affairs Corps, and a great guy. CSM Kohring, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Cover some of the administrative stuff. We put together a panel here, which has been painful at best getting together. Not because of anything from the association. I was in a near fatal motorcycle accident in end of the summer. So Sean Acosta, Master Sergeant Acosta, willingly jumped in and was going to take over the session as facilitator. He's since bowed out, and I've become healthy enough to go ahead and take the panel back over from him, let him take care of his workload business elsewhere. So I took the panel over from Sean. We were addressing the non-commissioned officer or the non-commissioned officer's role in network planning. So for the panel that Sean put together, and Sean and I had ended up putting together, we were able to get Sergeants Major Mathias and Ortega together, Master Sergeant Clark, and Staff Sergeant Vaughan. We may have Sergeant CSM retired Tim Strong drop in on us later after he gets out of a meeting. I'm not sure, but there's a specific scenario I'd like him to go into. Not scenario, but what his shop in proponents working on now as far as development and within the NCO Corps and Officer Corps for that matter as well. So I would like to thank Sergeant Major Analisa Ortega. She's the Operations Sergeant Major of the 3rd Battalion's 1st Special Warfare Training Group. Sergeant Major Frank Mathias, USACAPOC G37 Sergeant Major. Staff Sergeant Vaughan is with the 96th Civil Affairs Battalion. And thank you for showing up. And then we've got Master Sergeant Clark also, and he's with a Blease Swick at the moment. So thank you. Thank these folks for showing up for the panel. I would like to get into some of the thought process behind Sean's original development of the panel session. I'll read some of his 2 paragraphs out of what he supplied me from what he was working on. So what he asks is the NCO development and mentorship within the scope of civil network development to a point. As a nation rebalances strategic competition with combating non-state actors, the challenges posed to the civil affairs forces becomes increasingly complex. But what is being asked of civil affairs forces remains the same for the most part. Civil reconnaissance and civil engagement remain 2 of the cornerstones of the civil affairs capability. These capabilities provide operational, strategic, and strategic decision makers with the nuances and ground truth they need in order to make informed and accurate decisions and access the civil networks capable of preventing malign actors' exploitation of indigenous governments, populations, and institutions. He wrote in his 2nd paragraph, ensuring that our NCOs, our non-commissioned officers, are properly developed in not only these tasks, but the inherent tasks that come with remaining technically and tactically proficient, allowing our forces to adapt tactics, techniques, and procedures to execute missions in these complex environments. What is the Civil Affairs NCO Corps doing right? What is it missing? And how do we refine the development of non-commissioned officers at all levels? And that's what we're going to try to focus on, a little bit of both those areas today. In that, when I was talking with a couple of folks in the panel, and we asked, what is the civil network? As has already been discussed in the panels, we've had to, it's been discussed quite deep. Colonel Carnegie off the previous panel, he delved deeply into the networking issues, which is some very good comments. Not going to repeat what he got into, but it also helped lead right into what we're going to try to discuss some here today. What is the network? it would have to be a holistic approach to within civil affairs force structures, regardless of the tribe they're from or whether they're working conventional ops or special ops at all levels, and let alone what the other players on the area of operations are doing, be it other U.S. government agencies or DoD or foreign players, allies and whatnot. So, and what was some of the question we were kept coming back to was how our NCO is being currently developed, and part of that comes back to how new is the force field manual 3-57 civil affairs operations manual. Well, it's very new. It's published in September, over a year's worth of efforts out of the proponency to get this thing done, rewritten off the CBA, capabilities-based assessment. There's a lot of stuff in there. There still needs to be more in-depth things put into the field manual, but it approaches enough the subjects that we see where we're going. And when I talked to like Sergeant Major Mathias about how do we approach what the NCO role is within network development, it becomes a hard thing to do because currently, as defined within the brand new FM, nobody's really trained in network development within civil affairs at the moment. Not to say that's not something we haven't done and hasn't been done for decades in the past underneath different names, different monikers, but it has. So what I'd like to do is open up to Sergeant Major Mathias first, and if you would like Frank to go into some of the new FM, specifically in the network environment side of the house, and what would you like to talk about? You're muted, Frank.
All right, thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. You hit on a couple of things. The new FM brings up some new terms. We have civil network development engagement, something I think we've always done, like you said, under other monikers. What do we do? How we're integrating that civil knowledge integration. That's really what it gets about. That network includes host nation and indigenous population, and local governments, and everything within that operational footprint, but also the stakeholders in the joint interagency, intergovernmental, and multinational environment. A lot of that for our NCOs is how do we get them there more at the joint, and I think Army and the joint force is looking at now in the future training our NCOs more for the GEM environment. Sheer engaging of people is going to result in contacts and associates. The civil network development as a core competency, and the way it's highlighted in the 357 is something new, but again, something we've done. The overall understanding and acceptance across the Army and the joint force of the understanding and importance of the civil component has changed significantly. Combatant commanders at all levels understand that leveraging civil networks is important in order to influence and shape the operational environment and positively impact the information dominance that we're trying to have. It's drastically changed in the last 20 years. My first time I had even heard of civil affairs, I was an infantry soldier in the first Gulf War. I was in a mechanized unit with 1st Armored Division, and we were moving forward, and we got sliced, the civil affairs team that was then sliced to M113. My company commander at the time literally told those guys not to get off that track. They were allowed to drop the hatch, but that was it. You'll find that hard to believe in any BCT and what we're seeing in the CTCs today. The commanders understand the importance of civil affairs and what it brings to the table. That has been a dynamic shift. So I think that is the first major thing I've seen change. My 20-something years since I came in the early 90s. The second is what we're doing and how we're tracking our information. My first tour in Bosnia, I was on rotation 1.5. I was sent to Tuzla, Maine. Everything we did, and we worked very diligently, record all kind of information and multiple workbooks. That's how it was done back then. Everything was pen and paper. And Everybody else in every rotation afterwards must have done a really great job, because I was also on rotation 11. And when we got there, we inherited a room full of boxes of information. My guess is less than 10% of that information was ever captured in any digital form whatsoever, much less being really thoroughly integrated into operations. So, and now, having said that, we're moving forward. I heard somebody mention Google Earth as a way to capture information. And yeah, times have changed, and we love to overlay stuff with geospatial information, and that's important. But even NCOs came in the last 10 years in civil affairs have probably worked with multiple systems and different things, depending on who they're supporting, or going out to Google Earth, trying to get that COP for the combatant commander. I'm really glad to hear about Castle. I was glad to hear about CICASA. I hope this one, the fruit grows from the tree, and it's developed, and it becomes really a program or record that can work across all components and with our NATO CEMIC partners and so forth. So we have an opportunity to capture more data. We've gone through those steps of developing nodes and networks before, but sharing it and understanding that it has really not gotten us to where we want to be with a system that overlays and can be shared through all the combatant commanders in the operational areas that we're working in. As far as the NCO goes, I've experienced some dynamics, especially on a 4-man team, and several of my deployments, civil affairs were really the only ones that could move, and we had to take care of our own security. And if you got a single vehicle, that's an issue. A lot of times the primary engagement, just because of whether it's social dynamics, the officer would be the primary on that. And that's understandable, especially with other militaries and so forth. But one thing I've always noticed is that the NCO is the guy that's ended up putting that data into the system. So after every mission, it needs to be a good AAR, what was discussed. Every civil affairs soldier is a sensor. So when they're out there, even moving in a vehicle, the way the crowd or any pedestrians in a population is acting in any way, shape, or capacity, whether they're giving you hand signals or they're waving to you, makes a difference. And all that information needs to be recorded, and how we're looking at things and how we're doing our assessment of our environment. But like I said, the officers often take the primary engagement. One of the things I've noticed is what I always called secondary engagements in a lot of cases. The NCO could, the aide or the person that was working with the primary engagement POC, whether that was a local government official, he always had people working underneath him. And I always found that as a team sergeant that I could get in and deal with those people and make those connections. And in often cases, those were really the worker bees that were making things happen in a local office. And political shifts, sometimes the key leader that we engage would often be replaced, but those worker bees more often than not stay in place. So it gave us some opportunity to have long-term engagements. And you talked about some of the development. Again, with Castle, I hope it's a program of record. I hope we get where it will be long-term training and it's cradle to grave, as was, I believe Colonel Sykes stated before earlier, that it's just, you learn a little bit of what you need to for basic operation. And then as you progress through your career at a unit, you get more hands-on experience, experiential development, utilizing that, and hopefully the system will keep up and changes can be made. By doing that, I think if we can stick with a system long enough that we can share, for several years, even 3 to 5 years. I don't think we've managed to maintain any system for longer than 3 to 5 years so far. But if we can do that, we can get some advanced skills, we can get some further civil analysis, advanced skills training. And I think that's really where we need to be. Oftentimes, I think it's allowing soldiers to develop and participate in meetings instead of pulling security. And sometimes that's just mission oriented, but that needs to be handled as well. And development from that aspect. Oftentimes, if we got a combat armed soldier coming in, we're very straightforward to the point. We need to sometimes tone that down in civil affairs to engage with local populace. And I'm saying some things here that everybody knows, but in practice, sometimes it's hard to do, especially in a combat environment. We have to develop that skill set of being able to, understand the social dynamics of whatever area we're operating in. I think I've spoken enough for a little while. Let Sergeant Major Ortega jump in here, and we can circle back around.
You still with us, Sergeant Major Ortega? Okay, we'll try to come back around to her when she gets back up. It's funny you mentioned Sergeant Major Mathias Bosnia, because we think we're talking about a type of holding system for all the information that civil affairs produces. The first one I can recall was in 2000 or 1996, 97 at CAPOC with trying to develop a type of database for all the information that started coming out of Bosnia by that time. So it's nothing new, and it's disheartening that, two plus decades later, we're still hashing over the same ability to find one system that houses all the civil type information across the DA and DOD. But that's how it is. Part of one of my current job as a regional planner is, what are we going to worry about on the future environment? Is it going to be regionally focused like we're doing now, or are we going to go to the threat focus that seems to be coming out of a lot of the talks at the White House level and whatnot, as they refocus their efforts into this process, the problem sets out in the world, rather than locations of the problem sets, as it becomes more of a globalized problem. So, Master Sergeant Clark, please, if you're there, introduce yourself and give a little quick background on you and what you're doing, what you're at, and if you can, give us some of your input on what you see as a network, civil network issues going on, and where the NCO Corps needs to go in that venue.
Hey there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, I think to everything Sergeant Major Mathias, well, first to introduce myself, I'm helping work personnel policy up at the proponent, and with the AC MOS is coming online, there's no shortage of work to do there. So while I'm a reserve component soldier and I focus primarily on Compo 2 and 3 and what's going on there with the 38 Bravos that will remain, I've been helping out Master Sergeant D'Souza with writing some of the policy and guidance that's going to come for the new MOSs from the CPA that you mentioned earlier. But with regards to civil network development, much of what's already been said, to those themes, we really have to integrate. Information is useless if others don't know, if it simply stays in a vacuum with us. And so therefore it has to integrate on a system that the rest of the Army can access, and other our unified action partners to our left and right, they can utilize that information because it likely affects what's going on there. that crosstalk also allows us to maybe confirm some of the judgments we made to the tone of conversations that are taking place. Markets and as was brought up, every soldier's a sensor. How are things, how are markets, how are people, how are things happen that are happening to our right and left? What is the difference, or can we confirm that things are similar in adjoining and adjacent towns and provinces, districts, so on and so forth, in terms of identifying geographic footprints for a threat that could be helpful to know their influence. I think most all of us saw the news during ISIS, if we didn't participate in that directly in Syria, but the influence area of ISIS as it grew on the mainstream media, just day to day in the area that they were taking over, but gauging something like that, of the footprint of a threat and areas where we have positive control of, it's extremely relevant. So the use of partners going forward, so that whole civil military integration, use of other AMED branch and medical capabilities for public health problems, MPs for security, for just all that we have going on, or the maneuver element that we're supporting within LISCO. Sydney, while it's its own core competency, we constantly have to be thinking about where it falls in the phase lines of where we are in large scale combat operations or competition, and how the impact it's going to have in transitional governance as well, post conflict. So I think it's a, I say all that to say, I think it's a complex thing, but we have to have a fundamental understanding of its relevance. So I said a lot to say nothing really.
Not at all, man. Thanks for everything. We're going to shift over. I'm not sure if Sergeant Major Ortega was able to get back in. She got booted. She's trying to get back in. If she is, chime in, please. If not, then we'll Staff Sergeant Vaughan, are you up? Would you like to introduce yourself and put some mid-grade NCO insight into what you see coming up with both the new FM coming out and what you see as in the operational force coming up?
All right, you guys still hear me? All right, cool. Staff Sergeant Lucas Vaughan. I just recently got back from a SimC deployment to Jordan as of the Saturday before last. Before Jordan, I deployed to Lebanon on a SimC deployment with the 96. And previous to my civil affairs life, I had been in the infantry and deployed to Kosovo. As I thought about this panel, something that came to mind, I guess because it's really hot from my experiences on the ground in Jordan, I think specifically of project managing. I know that's a kind of a weird topic in civil affairs, at least from my experience being in. I've been in the branch over 5 years now. We, at least in my deployments, we leaned on it pretty heavy, but folks don't want to embrace it. And I think that really leads to ineptitudes in our utilization of that. Foremost, a misunderstanding of why we're doing project managing. It's for emplacement and access to the folks that we're developing, that we are building these relationships with. And I think that when we don't conceptually understand that, then we see a lot of projects that are clearly just created for sit reps that don't have a whole lot of continuity, and they end up spinning a lot of wheels. I think that our NCOs as a whole need to be trained better on why we're doing projects, the utility, and we need to, I think there needs to be some training on good concepts for project managing, like what are best methods, and a better understanding how to go through that project process, as well as things like contracting officer representative certificate, those kind of things. While you don't think of them when we speak about network, they're fundamental. At least a lot of the deployments I've had on a SimC, we use these projects to get access and develop our relationships with our partners. However, you can see in the handover when we have a RIPS that often these projects are either half-baked or there isn't any background into what is the purpose or focus of them. So the network development aspect of a given project is lost. And that, in conjunction with the fact that I've seen from historical data, most civil affair NCOs don't have a strong understanding of how to do project management, leads to an over focus on actually conducting that and a waste of resources, when if we could do that, we could streamline that process. If there could be the correct certifications in place and the conceptual understandings, then we could make better use of the government dollars that are funding these ODACA projects to develop networks in our given AOs and paint a better picture for that commander. So yeah, that's been something that's really on my mind, is just how do we professionalize myself and our peers to make that what it should be.
Thanks. On the subject matter of the civil network, I was talking to some of the analysts and regional planners and strategic planners at G5 USACAPOC. Mind that I got to keep all this in on-class forum. But a lot of the questions brought up is how do we build and maintain some type of civil network in foreign countries when we don't seem to have the ability or chance to maintain a persistent engagement within said region, as we keep pulling things out of one area, pushing to another. And that was the biggest key point that we were taking away in our discussions. The same thing when I was talking with Sergeant Mathias and a few other folks on the NCO side of the house in preparation for this panel, is when we're not maintaining a persistent engagement for year after year in a area, the loss of focus within a social or a civil network will be immense if you have to change out one individuals from our side of the house. If you have breaks in that contact, what's going to change within the civil network in the foreign country could be massive change. It could be it dissolves. It could, who knows? But without that persistent contact within it, it's almost no possibility of maintaining a civil network because it's got to have it. So as we roll into the future, whether we're going to be regionally focused or threat focused to sharpen our aim point, so to speak, on what we've got to engage in as a country, then that's going to be kind of part of the determining factor of where civil network engagement really drives. And I think the FM and the CBA for Civil Affairs Component leaves it open enough to obviously to address that. And as we delve through the FM, and unfortunately, I tried to get one of the proponent guys on, Master Sergeant Greg Benham, who has been the course writer for the 38 Romeo Civil Reconnaissance NCO for the proponent. He's now in the 83rd, and I wasn't able to link up with him. I guess I was writing SOCOM account, not writing to his new account. But he would have been and is probably the only guy that can really answer the question on where is the training going in the NCO Corps to develop the new FM into an actual courseware. And so in that, I'll keep getting a hold of Mr. Tom Radabaugh, who is now the training development deputy director for a TDD at a Civil Affairs Component in charge of the courseware. So he couldn't make it today either for previous engagements. So I'll keep in touch with them and we can add things into the next forum as far as the training, which will be hopefully more locked in by then on the next forum we do have. As far as where it's going, both officer and enlisted, and that should probably be one of our points on one of our next symposium next year, because it should come to fruition by then. And as far as what the real true breakdown of the FM3-57 and all these equities within it. And I don't see it. Sergeant Major Ortega came back up. Looks like we lost her, unfortunately. I don't know her, but I've heard some really great things about her. So if she can chime in at a later point. And what I wanted Tim Strong to come in for, which he isn't obviously now able to make it either, he's probably still in his other meeting, is that this leader development section, which is a new section with the CA proponent, they are working on some of the stuff I think that Colonel Pogge had brought about what are some of the second level of training and education that our Corps can take, can get and receive, and we're to bring us to that next level of planning of engagement out there. And I think Tim Strong and his guys have a lot of ideas out there floating. They definitely have some hard coded things they're doing, which is getting a lot of the education into accredited and regionally accredited, so that folks can start earning their bachelor's and master's degrees out of the programs that don't currently have it, especially on the NCO side of the house, and even advanced degrees at all levels. So I think they're working that. That'll probably be one of those discussions that gets brought into the CAA at a future date when that's panned out, and they got the things going on. And right now, of course, we're looking at the potential Army drawdown, so we're not sure what that effect's going to have on any of the staff structures. If we're taking a 20% cut across the board, and we'll see where that goes. I'm going to open it up for questions and answers rather than hear myself talk. And I know we kind of did this fairly quickly, but I lost too many of my panel members due to whatever. So I'll open up to questions, and if anybody has any questions, please throw them out here. We'll try to answer them. I will also get the bios for the people that did sit on my panel, and the rest that couldn't make it, get them out into this posted here sometime the next day, by either tonight or tomorrow. I'll get them posted, because I wasn't able to get those turned in on time. So DM, who is DM?
Oh, hey, this is Captain Dan Moriarty.
Captain Moriarty, please ask. Did you have a question?
Oh yeah, and apologies if I stepped on someone who raised their hand. Yeah, just typing it into the chat. Just kind of curious about the panel, his thoughts on technical skills moving forward for CA/NCOs. Just kind of for context, my previous job was the CKI chief at 83rd, and through a lot of the training I did with different teams, definitely saw deficiency in data literacy at the CA/NCO and honestly at the officer level across all ranks when it came to just how to collate information, analyze for trends. I know there's a big push for operating in the digital realm when we can't maintain a physical presence. So overall, just kind of wanted to get the panel's thoughts on where they see technical gaps for that population.
I'm not sure if I have an answer for that.
Hey, Tim.
Yes.
Hey, I think I'll answer some of that. So part of the Castle initiative is identifying the skills and requirements right from the beginning of the schoolhouse and all the way through PME that addresses the NCO as well as the officer on how to do the actual analysis, right? The example I like to use is a PFC that is an ICO or an intel kit. A PFC gives a battalion commander the most likely and most dangerous. He's trained at AIT on how to do that analysis, right? Regardless of his rank. And it gets only better as time goes on. Taking that same idea, we're going to be training through the Castle, right? Looking at the science pieces of it on how to get our guys trained in conducting civil analysis, make you the subject matter expert. That I think is going to get to, and we'll get into some more of those technical skills that you were just addressing in your chat there, that I think will answer that question in the future, right? We're still working that issue right now, but what we want to get is our NCOs to be able to say the so what of why it's what's the important thing they're analyzing. Over.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, the given the newness of the FM 3-57, it is supposed to be 100% published before course material is written, anywhere from the individual task to the collective task. The proponent pushed ahead even up to a year ago, go ahead and start co-producing those task sets with the production of the FM to try to get to this solution quicker and faster than it's been done in the past. It's varying results, but it's coming to fruition. It's being worked. I know both barrels at the proponent on all levels, so I know they're pushing ahead hard. Manpower, like everybody's had through COVID, has been an issue at times. So give it time, and these things will come most certainly, and certainly with the restructuring of units as the CBA is going to dictate eventually, and obviously FM guys would have to talk more on that kind of thing. But you know, what does a team look like now, and what will it look like 2 years from now? It may not be the same thing. So I'm not sure those decisions are finalized yet. That have to be another discussion for another time. But that brings up, what is the role of the NCO as a team sergeant or as a team member? Bringing up the civil networking is not a NCO thing. It's a holistic of the team thing, and and everybody on the mission, whether it's project management or regional management or network management or even the threat management within an area from the top level down. The NCO's position is still going to be keeping everything in sync, keeping everybody on the same sheet of music, and ensuring that everything's being done to maintain the data, obviously. So, and he or she will not be the only person doing that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I know how to read the hand. If people got their hands up, will it show up on their icon?
Yes, we got Steve who's raised a hand. Go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Colonel Steve Caceres from the 352. Hey, I like the idea of the PMP, effort for many reasons. It's a win-win, not only for the individual, getting that certification, that well-known certification PMP, project management professional that's recognized nationally. So that getting, some kind of momentum to get that for soldiers, for NCOs, for young soldiers to get that going would be outstanding. With all the transition training that's happening out there for folks, if they're able to pick up that PMP, it would not only help them in their current job, the CA job, but when they get out of the military, and then also win-win for the Department of Defense. I mean, if we have projects and Oasis is, those small projects, major, minor projects that we go out there, if we can put it together and have somebody that's trained to do projects professionally, and we're able to, complete a project or take over a project that's maybe not in the best position, it just brings legitimacy, brings value to our effort there, makes us look credible and professional to our partners. And there's a lot of funding that's being put into these projects. So a well-managed project brings many benefits to not only our CA effort, but also to the individual soldier. So I think, and I'm just jumping on what the engineers, I used to be engineer, and engineer community used to value that and push that for engineers to get their PMP certification. So I think if we take and copy paste what the engineers are doing for CA, we may bring a lot of value to a lot of stakeholders, including the individual NCO or soldier. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Do we have any other hands raised, John?
We do not. We do have two questions that came in the little chat. First Sergeant Will Sauter is asking for people who are unfamiliar with the new 38 series MOS, if we could explain those.
Unfortunately, Sergeant Ortega is probably the best person on the panel to address that. I can look at it and say that what I know is that the 38 Romeo MOS is the Civil Reconnaissance NCO that is designed to specifically focus on the soft skill sets that are being, well, the skill sets of civil affairs that are being applied predominantly in the soft region area of operations, so that they can focus the NCOs on that stuff and that alone. How that's going to interact with deployment of CA forces when you got a soft formation followed on by a conventional formation and you no longer have the same MOSs or branches, that's still got to get answered within the request for forces process, as well as the usability of the force and the operation and organization documents that'll get produced out of SWIC and USACAPOC, or USAC now, with the UFMC over there. So a lot of those things still have to be answered, and I know that Dennis Cahill and all the rest, Colonel Sisk and all those guys are working hard on getting all these things done. And it's just it really is a mountain of work and material that needs to come up to get all that stuff done and done quickly and cohesively, so that it all meshes at the end of the day. You got the right MOSs, branches on the ground, and the right team formations at the right echelon of work within an international environment to get whatever the mission assignment is completed. So to get all that done is just every facet of what we do in this branch and this capability has to be addressed, and it pretty much is getting addressed one way or other. So I see, Steve, you had another question.
Yes, back to the PMP. So my question was, are there any efforts ongoing or, in the process to get PMP for NCOs or anybody in CA?
I would have to write that down and give it to Mr. Strong and his leadership team. That's probably the best source for to look up to. So I'll go ahead and copy paste your written note here over from PMP from the chat window.
Hey, gentlemen, I think we typically look for a pathway or answer or maybe a SOC provided answer. But the big Army has actually provided this a solution rather. And the new credentialing assistance stuff that's kind of just grown within the Army, and you can actually apply for a program, the 1 week, like 40-hour train up, and they will pay for somebody to take the PMP certification one time, and you can find all that information through the Army Ignited website. So just put that out there for everybody. I thought Staff Sergeant Vaughan's point was pretty good, and it's a valuable skill. So, but yeah, Big Army's made that available, and Civil Affairs is one of the top MOSs listed in the Army Ignited website for utilizing that.
And what was that website again?
Army Ignited. If you Google anything that sounds like what I tried to say, then you'll get to it.
All right. Thank you for that input.
Well, that's great. Yeah, that's great, because that's a huge.
Assistance at.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I was saying Army Ignited is the same site that you do Army tuition assistance at now. It's all credentialing, tuition assistance is all under the same program.
Learn something new every day. This is how it should be. Anthony Curry asking, are your NCOs allowed to visit Russia?
That's what we do. And that's one of the major tools that we.
Would somebody care to answer from the AC side of the house? I'm guessing for visit Russia and China. I would tend not to think so at the moment, but because Anthony Curry is asking from the British Army, are any of our NCOs allowed to visit China or Russia on tourist visas to learn about this country and people if they wanted to? I would say it's probably a negative given our State Department.
Hey, Tim, I'm going to chime in. When I was assigned to SWIC a few years back, I was allowed to visit China.
Okay.
I spent a month over there. So I can't say for every command and things today because I hadn't looked into it, but in the past, at least, we have been able to visit China. And I know a couple of folks that have gone to Russia.
In the past, sir, for Anthony Curry, I would say it's going to come down to exactly like Sergeant Mathias said. It's going to come down to the unit policy at the probably senior level policy, and or whatever the current State Department, U.S. State Department standing is on any given country in the world as to who can go there and for what reasons.
Tim, John here. There's a question that came in from retired General Chris Stockwell, typed in the chat. General Stockwell, are you on if you want to ask that question live? Roger, what he had written, there's so many folks from DoD, NGOs, IOs, and non-DoD. Who is mapping this, and what does it mean to commanders at all levels? Also, is there a feeling that CA, these project folks, General Stockwell?
Yeah, no, you got it right. Just so often it's like, oh, that the CA will just manage those projects, but what does that mean? Is that a good thing for the brand? What are we learning from it? To just, I just thought the comments about projects were interesting before, and if somebody would take it to the next level, I appreciate it. Thanks.
So in regards to the first portion of your question, if I understand it correctly, as far as like the coordination piece, that is on the civil affairs team when they're deployed to the SIMC environment, to be aware of the NGOs and other organizations that are conducting projects in the area to make sure there's no duplicity in efforts. And if they're doing a good job, we should be aware of what's going on in that environment. As far as USAID is concerned or anything, the embassy, at least in my experience, and I believe this is standard practice in all AOs, there has to be a concurrence that will be gifted from USAID before we can push our project through the OASIS system. There has to be a concurrence from USAID saying you're good to go. This isn't going to interfere with anything we're doing. Now to the second part of that question, is there a feeling that CA folks are the project folks? I believe there is, and I think there's kind of some ambivalence to that. I know a lot of people don't want to be branded as the project folks. However, we ultimately do use them, specifically in the 96. I know that there's lots of projects in those SIMC environments. And so it's one of those things that we need to embrace. I feel like that ambivalence kind of gets pushed to the wayside because people ultimately can learn via the fire hose, but that's not the way to do it, because then instead of trying to capitalize on those network development, that information gain from those projects, you're having NCOs that are putting too much time and just struggling to manage those projects. So are we? I think in some environments we are, but I think that we can capitalize on that, and it can be a strong thing. Going back to who's aware of these projects, if, in my opinion, a team is doing it wrong, if they go into a meeting with whoever it is, whether, especially if it's peers, if they're leading with their brief about their activities and they're leading with what projects they're doing, they're missing the mark. When you're communicating to your commander, there needs to be the why. That's more important than what we're doing when it comes to these projects. Is why do we have these projects here? What are we going to gain out of them? And I think that the mismanagement and ultimately the incompetency in our project management leads to the why often getting lost when we rip every 6 months. And the two enemies to effective project management, which ultimately ties back into civil reconnaissance, is one, that I do not believe we have that solid foundation of training for most NCOs. And two, there's that in my experience, every SIMC deployment is very personality driven. So you have, like, your team leader might have a different focus, or a command team might have a different focus on the area. So some of the projects that are on a project manager's list might go out of vogue for a cycle and they'll come back in. But if we're gifted or acquired the proper project management skills, it will enable them to responsibly and confidently take care of all the projects, and we can move forward and keep our energy focused on gathering that information, painting that picture for the commander via our work with these projects.
No, I appreciate those comments, right? And, especially from the NCO side of the standpoint, because I can't tell you how many times at RCENT when I really got deeply involved with ODACA, what was the whole purpose behind it? Who decided the why? So totally agree that the procedure is the embassy buy-off, but then you have the exercise related construction. You have the Corps of Engineers doing their own sets of projects. And they could be managing the ODACA project like they did for me in Jordan, right? They were the implementers of it. And everyone got upset because I think they charged at the time like an extra 15% to manage that for you. But heck, they got overhead too, right? But people felt like, oh, they were just trying to make money on us or something like that. And it was like DOD's just moving money around to dump in the Corps account. But I appreciate your the personality driven, all those are just key factors. And it's just great to hear that in a different form from other people. So people can prepare for that, and then they can be better stewards of taxpayers' dollars, but also, as you stressed, the why. So that's great. This soccer field, soccer field here, this schoolhouse we're going to paint over here, but what's the why? Is it access placement? Is it because somebody made a promise 2 years ago at the embassy and we're just trying to help them out? Well, that's okay, because when they were growing the network, right? I'm not all about scratching backs all the time, but if, we can do a minimum cost something to make somebody happy, then, that's the first cup of tea or the third cup of tea, deposit in the emotional bank account, whatever it takes. We should be managing that, in our minds and in the computer using whatever system of record we are. So there's just not, a warehouse full of paperwork. So it's super, Lucas, thank you. Tim, back over to you. Appreciate the comment. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I don't see any more questions. I don't see any more hands up. So we're probably end up going to cut this early. I'm going to throw back at the panel members I did have that could stick around and didn't get booted out of the Zoom thing. And I was hoping Tim Strong would show up, but I guess he can't make it either. Frank, you have anything?
No, I just think it's good to see everything moving and changing. Where we're going is not where we've been, and especially as it relates to civil networking development and engagement. So that's going to change. The proponents got the job to identify the knowledge, skills, and attributes that our NCOs need. That can only be done with good feedback from the field. So at the lowest level, from the the CA sergeant all the way up to sergeant majors and CSMs, we need to make sure that feedback is earnestly being provided. I'd like to see CASEL be a civil affairs program or record where it's instituted across the entire force of CA. Maybe even look at bringing the Marine forces in on it, at some point. But we've got to get to a system that we can share data, and we need to identify those skills that what are the base skills to be a civil affairs NCO, to get qualified in the MOS. And I've always said, and I worked at the proponent in the CA directorate, so I share part of the blame. We have never identified, or we've never, for at least for specific positions where advanced skills are needed. And those advanced skills, whether it's leader development. We used to have some guys in the proponent called advanced skills training developers, but I think they've been recoded or done. I don't think they ever produced anything, at least that I know of, at least not while I was there. But there are definitely advanced skills that are needed within our career field, whether it's, analyzing social aspects of our environment, data analysis, surveys that actually record the data that you need to make comprehensive inference on what is happening in your AO. So that's, I think we're moving in the right direction. I think the FM, highlight some areas where we want to be. There's some things that I would like to see different. I think it's, for the reserve force, I'm not sure it really focuses enough on what we do in phase 1, phase 2 operations. It's really more phase 3 and phase 4. And I think General Coggin is on record of saying that as well. But having said that, as far as NCOs and development in the reserve force, at least the last 2 years with COVID, we got to strike a balance with technical and tactical proficiency. And right now, for the last couple of years, it's been hard for us to even get our guys to the ranges to maintain the lethality aspect of their training. So just like I said, where we're going is not where we've been, and that's a good thing. But everybody needs to come to the table and bring their experiential development and perspective, and it needs to be hashed out at the proponent level. That's really all I got, and it's been great taking part and listening to everyone's perspective and what they had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Sergeant Mathias. Yeah, along the lines of what Frank was talking about, I wish Tim Strong could have joined us. I think a lot of these things we're all asking about training and advanced training for NCOs is going to get flushed out both by Tom Radabaugh's people doing the course development. They'll have to do a strategic task analysis board soon within the next year to have the operational force vote on the tasks. That's when the operational force really gets to weigh in formally on what's being taught. But in any time between now and then, the entire operational force has every right to get a hold of the opponent and ask these questions also. And that's what they're there for. But if Tim Strong's leader development folks come in as they try to regionally credit all the courseware being produced out of SWIC a CA proponent right now, that will have to get to some of the advanced skill sets and certifications in the process as they get everything we teach into that level of approval by the regional boarding process. And he can get all the technical reasons and background of that. The other person, hello, Chad. What do you have for your closing comments, Chad?
Yeah, I would say the things we're talking about with the FSA and its findings and a whole lot of that is, I think we live in a paradigm of saying this course needs to have a 1050. We need this skill to have a 1059 associated with it, and it needs to be taught by SWIC. But to be quite honest, the market, Big Army, and or rather than the market, I'll say the private sector has solved a lot of these problems and has basically 95% solutions to this, or other MOSs have those solutions. For instance, like the technical expertise. Are we talking 17 series MOSs and simply embedding them in with a civil focus? Well, so when it comes to it, when we think of what that problem is or that shortfall that exists, and is it already solved by the Army, but it just lies somewhere else, or is there a private sector solution that really doesn't cost that much? And is that a way to fulfill that gap? Or and then within civil network development, is it just getting embedded with 2 shop or the 25 or the 6 shop or whomever's doing those things? So keep in mind that like our unified action partners are pretty robust, whether you're with a BCT or an ODA or whatever. There's people that know things, and we don't have to always own all of that on a civil affairs team to get access to it, because we may only need the access for a short period. To talk about phases 0 through 5, there's a lot of different activities, and every mission brings a unique set of needs with it. So sometimes we just don't need to have it all in a CA team 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the next 2 decades till a new FM comes out. But that's my closing comments. I think it was a great discussion today. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Mr. Arkart. Lucas, do you have any closing comments for the group?
Yes, thank you for allowing me to participate in this. Very enlightening and rewarding to get to share some of my point of views. Thank you. I mean, that's all I have to say, really. Hopefully we can do this again. And the writing contest I'm seeing in the comments sounds like a great idea.
I appreciate your diligence in jumping in right coming off a deployment. I know you probably had 1,000 other things you would have rather done this afternoon, but thank you for your time, Staff Sergeant. That's, I think all I have. Let me see if there's anything on the chat still. Colonel Christakis said some things.
Hey, Tim,
Sure.
just pardon the interruption. Hey, just to make a plug, I appreciate the folks reading that comment, but let CAA do some of the heavy lifting for people that have 40 things on their to-do list and they only have time to action 6 of them. Let me, Tim, any other senior leaders on the Civil Affairs Association board, we'll put a special mini writing contest together, give some money out. Last year we gave out some Glocks, and then we have the call for papers every year. First place 1,000, second place 500, third place 250, which everyone will get to see on Wednesday. So please stick around for that. But let us know. And we're the association for the civil affairs folks out there, and we're trying to turn into like a little mini RAN for civil affairs. And it's if it works, great. If not, we made some connections in the process of learning. And, a couple folks out there are going to get some money that they can go spend on something. So let the association do some of the lifting. And then thanks to everybody for participating today. Back over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very appropriate shameless plug in there. That was awesome. So unless anybody else has any other questions, John, I guess we're going to call this one a wrap, I guess, and get everybody out of here an hour early for doing their Thanksgiving plannings and anything else they got going on.
Yeah, that sounds good. There was one question that came in. I'm not sure if you want to field that now or do the wrap.
Sure.
Joseph Montagna asked if there are staffing challenges with 38 Bravos, what can be done to ensure that those slots are filled and the NCOs are MLS qualified?
I'm not sure if there are staffing problems. I'd have to actually, Chad might be able to answer some of that for the proponent side of the house, what he's seen since he's been there. Chad, got anything?
From the active component has less of a staffing issue. Those 4 KCONs and 8 brigades that are on the KFOC side, and there's a lot of variables to it, and we're really trying to hunt it down. But there is some significant issues with recruitment, retention, or I'm just gonna say readiness. I guess you always have an inflow and an outflow. That's constant and never going to change. It's just tweaks slightly on other years or on different years. But we are short at certain grade plates for sure. We get stronger as we get higher. E8s and E9s pretty healthy there. E7s, E5s, E6s, E7s could always use those. So some USAR buddies or knows people transitioning to the Army Reserve, put in a word.
Thanks. Yeah, as you know, the DAC has an automated personnel replacement process, where the USAR really doesn't. So everybody in the USAR is a recruiter in the regional unit, in the regional area where their units are located. So really, that's the answer for the USAR shortfalls in manning is self-recruiting out there at whatever level you currently are if you're in the reserve component. And I think that's all we got. So I'm going to say it's probably a good evening, and I'll probably see everybody in the morning, I guess. John?
That's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Retired Command Sergeant Major Timothy Kohring, who hosted this discussion about the role of the CA NCO in building networks. Thanks to our speakers. Really appreciate your day today and your time, your expertise. And yes, we'll see you tomorrow. Take a look at your messages for the links for the Zoom meetings tomorrow. We got a packed day with conversations as well. So thank you so much for this discussion. Have a good night.